Just wait for Councillor Lehman to grab a seat and we shall crack on. Wherever you like, yeah. Too many choices. Is it fun?
I went to a festival last week. The person who turns up late stands at the front because they're taller. Because I'm tall, I like to go to the back.
It's fine.
Go sit in front of Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, no. Yeah,
So we shall crack on. But just before we get started, could any members or officers in physical attendance with an electronic device mute it to avoid feedback? And could our remote participants keep their microphone and camera off unless they wish to speak, so that as this can affect the quality of the meeting. This meeting is being live webcast and the recording stays on the council's website. So I shall get going. Well, I'd like to welcome everybody to this evening's hybrid Eastern Area Committee, the first of this civic year, as we were delayed by our general election. So thank you very much for joining us all. The following Swale Borough Council officers are in attendance: our Chief Executive Larissa Reid and Policy and Engagement Officer Janet Dart. I'd also like to welcome Mark Welch, our Principal Transport Planner from KCC, who I believe is online.
Yes.
Mike Elsmore from Faversham Pools and John Lazenby, the Managing Director of Faversham Pools, and our KCC member for Swale East, Councillor Lehman, who is here with two hats on. Are there any representatives of parish or town councils in attendance who would like to introduce themselves? I can see Councillor Tutt and Louise and Adrienne and Councillor Newman, from Faversham Town Council. Are there any?
We've got Councillor Stewart online. Is there anybody else online who'd like to just introduce themselves? No, I think it's just
That's great. So thank you very much all. If you'd like to speak on any item, please raise your hand and I'll invite you to speak. Likewise, for those online, if you could indicate using the IM remotely, we will spot you and call you to speak as well when we get to that point. So, agenda item 1, emergency evacuation procedure. Please be aware of the evacuation procedures to follow in the event of an emergency. There is no scheduled test of the fire alarm during this meeting. If the alarm does sound, please leave the building quickly without collecting any of your possessions, using the doors signed and as fire escapes, and assemble outside where directed. Await instructions before re-entering the building, and should anyone require assistance in evacuating the building, please make Swale Borough Council officers aware of any special needs so that suitable arrangements may be made in the event of an emergency. Is there anybody who requires any? Fantastic. So, agenda item 2, apologies for absence. Have we got any apologies, Janet?
Yes, we have apologies from councillors Kieran Goulding, Hannah Perkin and Ben Martin. I don't see Councillor Claire Martin or Terry Thompson. Does anybody know if they're sending apologies?
Terry is on his way here but delayed, so he does hope to be here.
Okay, thank you. And I have also had apologies from Councillor Josh Rowlands from Faversham Town Council.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So then, agenda item 3, are there any declarations of interest on any of the items on the agenda this evening? I think silence is good. We shall move on. Agenda item 4, minutes of the previous meeting. So do members agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of February 2024, which I realise it's a long time ago now, minute numbers 702 to 712, and 15th of May 2024, minute numbers 19 to 20 as correct records? See some nodding. Yeah, can I have a proposer and seconder, please? Okay, happy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, agenda item 5, Kent Local Transport Plan. I'd like to introduce Mark Welch, the Principal Transport Planner at KCC, who will give a presentation on the Kent Local Transport Plan.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for such a swift start to the meeting and coming to this item. It's excellent to see, especially given it's an evening. Right, what I'll do, I'll just share slides, so we should be going full screen in a moment. I think Councillor Mike Whiting at KCC liaised, I think, with Janet, and we are giving this briefing at all the area committees. We've also, just to make you aware, we've also notified and provided a briefing paper to the Swale JTB, and we've also already engaged with, prior to this consultation, Swale officers and of course KCC members as well. But this is a good opportunity just to make sure everyone is aware as possible about the transport plan consultation, because you may not have been, and you may want to provide individual comments, either in a member of the public capacity, or if you have a seat on Swale Council and so on, you can do that individually, of course. We expect that there will be a Swale Council response to the plan as well, come the end of the consultation. So I'm just going to run through what a local transport plan is, what the council's consulting on, so some of the detail about the council's public consultation, so what we've been doing, when it will finish, and then when the actual plan itself will be completed by Kent County Council. So this is a statutory plan. It's a statutory requirement of KCC. It's so on a similar sort of footing, if you will, to yourselves at Swale Council as a local planning authority, having a statutory responsibility as a plan making authority, a local plan, a local development plan. This is, as the local transport authorities, its statutory responsibility in respect of having a transport plan. Now, one thing I want to emphasise is, whilst it's a substantial undertaking for KCC, it is not still as substantial an undertaking as a local plan is for a local planning authority, but there are some similarities. And as you can see there, the legislation says that we have to develop policies and an implementation plan for those policies as well. So what it means, the crux is, it's about identifying what the county needs where, by when, and why it needs it. This is a fifth local transport plan for KCC. So legislation was put in place back around turn of the century, start of new millennium. And KCC has been one of the better local authorities nationally in England at keeping a local transport plan that's contemporary and reflective of its current priorities. The fifth plan that we're doing has been supported with funding from central government after they identified a lapse across many authorities in keeping plans up to date, and particularly as government and civil service, the Department for Transport, started to look towards the need for future comprehensive spending reviews. They saw local transport plans as the mechanism for getting a better grip on the needs of local transport across the country. So we are doing this. We're trying to complete this within the time frame that was set by the Department for Transport for us, which was by 2024, and it should set out what, for Kent, we think the broad requirements are and the cost of those. It's called striking the balance because, as you'll no doubt be aware, through the different mechanisms in which you, of course, make representation to and engage with KCC on the subject of transport, we've got very pressing challenges with our current network, and the need for investment in that current network, particularly in terms of highways maintenance, and also in terms of hopefully continuing to get more money into improving the bus network as well, further to that funding that we have received over the last couple of years. If it's adopted, the Local Transport Plan 5 will of course replace Local Transport Plan 4. So we need to strike a balance between the current day challenges and their pressing need for funding, but also the future opportunities and challenges. And the council drafted an ambition that sets out what it wants to do, what the outcomes it wants from its local transport plan. And, again, this ambition is relatively balanced. It's got the sorts of things you'd expect to see there, But it's specific as well about some of the things that we'll aim to do, such as supporting delivering emission-free travel, for example, given the climate emergency that many authorities have declared, and so efforts that can be undertaken there. There's a series of intended outcomes. There's 10 intended outcomes. One of the challenges with these plans is that they are everything plans for local transport authorities. We're not just required to set out a plan that effectively concerns our managed transport networks, so the local road network. We're required to set out a plan that addresses the whole of the transport system in the county. And for Kent, with its international terminals, for example, in Dover and Folkestone, formerly Ashford and Ebbsfleet international stations, with airports and so on. That means that for Kent, there are a range of bases that have to be covered, which is why there are 10 outcomes there. But it's important to make sure that they are all covered and that we have a clear sort of view on what we want to see as an outcome, and he set a degree of policy basis for KCC going forwards. So what specifically then is the council actually consulting on? So some of that stuff that you saw, the ambition, the outcomes, that was subject in detail to a consultation that we undertook last year. We are consulting again this summer into early autumn. Those aspects, the ambition, the outcomes, can still be commented on because we haven't made any final decisions in respect of the local transport plan. The council hasn't voted on whether to adopt the plan or not. So, of course, at the end of this consultation, we'll do a conscientious consideration of the feedback and come to a determination whether to make any changes to the plan before deciding whether to adopt it. So aspects such as the ambition, the outcomes, there is still an opportunity to provide feedback on that. And within the consultation, there is a specific question that provides people that opportunity if they didn't come across the consultation last year. Some of the key messages in the KCC local transport plan, again, touching on what I emphasised with its title, Striking the Balance. We really are putting on this occasion, maintaining the road network, so getting sustained sufficient funding for that, and also reiterating the council's comprehensive and detailed plan for investing government funding in the bus network, so what's called the Bus Service Improvement Plan, which we've received some funding for, but we still have a substantial comprehensive plan that would need far more funding to be delivered. Those are two absolutely fundamental challenges, and they are, of course, also directly responding to two of the most often cited issues from constituents in Kent as well. The condition of the road network and concerns about the bus network. In the past, we've probably been more focused on new infrastructure investment, but really this is a reflection of where we are current day and the financial pressures that we've had to respond to for a sustained period now, and the impact those have had on the transport network. What the plan also does is sets out the funding needed for local transport plan proposals. And as I say, this is really important. It's part of what the Department for Transport wants to understand. And suffice it to say, we need substantial money. We have some existing transport proposals, projects that have been in development that are, tens of millions. One is, hundreds of millions of pounds, but we see them as, essential really for the road network. We also need, not included in these numbers, but we also need national bodies such as National Highways to invest heavily in the strategic motorway and trunk road network as well. So something like the Lower Thames Crossing, Kent County Council supports in principle. It's made that very clear through its planning examination, and now we await government to make a funding decision on that. That is, multiple billions of pounds as well. So the funding need for transport in Kent is substantial. It's substantial just for KCC. It's substantial overall. And, that's in a context where if you go on the KCC website and look at how we spend our budget at the moment, 2p in every £1 of our budget is spent on highways. So we don't have, space within our existing budgets to find this funding. The funding will need to come external to KCC, and fundamentally primarily from government is the council's current position. What we've then done within the local transport plan is set out proposals, big county-wide strategic proposals for this is the strategic road network. So it covers that part of the network that National Highways manages, but which is very impactful and integral to how people make journeys within Kent. KCC's long held strong views on how the strategic road network should be invested in and managed. I mentioned the Lower Thames Crossing. We also have the international crossing points, and we have a number of other sites across the network as well. And so we take this opportunity to reiterate and make clear to National Highways and the government where we would like to see national spending through National Highways invested, what schemes we want to see developing as part of their project lifecycle process, and what we'd like to see being delivered on the ground. We've also got proposals for the local road networks, the network that KCC manages. And whilst it doesn't look like we necessarily have a huge volume of them, the reality is what we've got is significant, expensive, and therefore we're also realistic about just how much we're likely to be able to deliver given likely funding. We've set out proposals for the public transport network as well, and shared transport within that. So some of the new emerging concepts in shared transport, such as mobility hubs, where those are being developed and explored as part of major new developments, such as at Ebbsfleet Garden City and down in southeast Kent. And also dealing with our managed parts of the bus system, such as the fast track network. And lastly, we've also set out proposals already as part of something called the Kent Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Plan. So the KCWIP for short. We consulted on that at the end of last year, early into 2024, and it was commissioned as part of the local transport plan work to make sure that within our local transport plan, we have some initial corridors, desire lines and areas across Kent where, if we're fortunate enough to get, again, some sustained funding for investing in active travel, further to what we've managed to do more recently through the tranches that, as you're probably well aware, we've got money for Faversham, for example. We've had some success in the past, but again, at the moment, there's not clarity over how that funding will be available in the future. What we've set out fundamentally where we would like to try and focus some of those efforts in the future if we can get that funding. And then for Swale, so what the plan also does for all 12 districts, it sets out covering some of those strategic proposals and some of the more local aspects within each district itself. So there's an opportunity within the consultation. You don't have to provide a view on all of that other stuff elsewhere in Kent. You can just focus in on, as I'm sure many people will want to do so, you can just focus in on your part of the district and respond to the questions about Swale, of course. And there's an opportunity within the consultation to provide your view on whether you support these different proposals district by district as well, and also to provide free-form written responses too about how you'd like to see transport improved as part of your district for KCC to consider and see whether there are any supplemental proposals to pull into the local transport plan on a district by district basis, and also whether there are any proposals that we have already set out on a district by district basis that actually people think are the wrong type of proposal, either from a sort of principle basis or from a spatial basis. It's in the wrong place. I don't think that's where the challenge necessarily is, and I think they've got a different alternative that KCC should consider. And not to sort of lead the witness in any way, but we have had some good feedback already, both in Swale and elsewhere, with stakeholders, members of the public saying, actually, I've got another proposal for you, or here's an alternative to what you have set out. So it's going well at the moment, the consultation in those terms. And hopefully these sorts of briefings and awareness will help further that. So the consultation runs to the end of Tuesday, the 8th of October. So if you want to be a night owl and submit it 1 minute before midnight, be my guest. You can attend drop-in sessions as well. I've been holding drop-in sessions across Kent. Swale, we're running 2 drop-in sessions. None of them have happened yet, which is another nice part of these briefings as it stands, is we're able to increase awareness about those. So on the 10th of September at Sheppey Gateway in Sheerness, we will be there. And from 12 till 4 o'clock, I believe. And on the 24th of September at Sittingbourne Library, we'll be there from 12 till 4 o'clock in the afternoon as well. All the details again are on our website. And we'll have all the copies of the consultation materials. People can take copies away with them. They can provide verbal feedback, fill in a consultation form there if they so choose, and so on, and talk to members of the project team. When will the local transport plan be completed? Well, the aim at the moment, the council running this consultation into early October, is it will then consider the feedback following the close of consultation over October and November. And then depending on how substantial the changes are or not that it feels it needs to make to the plan, it currently is intending to consider adopting having a vote on whether to adopt the plan at a December County Council meeting of Kent County Council. So we will see what happens. We have, of course, an email address specifically on this. It's always monitored, I guarantee that. Every day we look and respond to the questions, so you can contact that as well. And again, that's across all of our consultation materials. Otherwise, thank you for listening. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Mark. I'll open the floor to any questions from any members, and just apologies to those joining online. If you can hear some background noise, some children in the neighbouring room are having nearly as much fun as we are, I'm sure. So, yeah, if somebody at the back wouldn't mind closing the door, that might be helpful. But yeah, open the floor to any questions.
I noticed you're supporting the Lower Thames crossing, which strikes me as, when part of your stated aim is to try to reduce carbon emissions, that must be one of the things that's going to increase them more than anything else in the plan, at a cost of, as you admitted, several billions, and will actually just funnel more traffic down the A2 and to, around Faversham in particular. So I'm disappointed to see that support is there for Lower Thames crossing. And would really feel that government could be perhaps persuaded to spend billions more on things that actually would reduce carbon more, especially given your projections on the in the report show that even with your best scenario for carbon reduction improvements on the with your projections don't meet the levels that are needed for us to get down to the net zero by 2050. So that's something that particularly disappoints me, that there is actually support for the Lower Thames crossing.
Thank you, noted. I mean, there's not much more for me to say as an officer on that. I mean, the council's position is clear. It sees Lower Thames crossing as sort of vital, really, for resilience of the road network and helping to make sure that particularly international haulage traffic and the burden on Dartford as a town centre, and the sort of crippling local congestion it receives from the fragility of Dartford crossing, which is substantially over capacity compared to its design, is addressed. So, there's a degree of balancing effectively what's needed across Kent and some of the demands and pressures on the network in that way. But your feedback, absolutely heard and helpful.
Thank you. Any other members' questions?
You've got some very high-level objective there, like increasing use of public transport, but in practical terms, you've cut the subsidies to rural bus services so that parishes like mine have ended up with no bus service at all until Faversham Town Council got his own back came up with its hopper service. So in practical terms, how are you going to achieve that objective of increasing use of public transport, and where is the money going to come from?
Yeah, this is the big challenge for not just KCC, but every local transport authority is, the challenges that we have financially and the money that we've been receiving for being able to invest in and support transport networks, both those that we manage and those that operate within our patches. I think Kent County Council has been clear to the last government and probably be clear to the current new government that it doesn't feel that the money is sufficient. And the achieving the local transport plan is predicated on there being more funding. And my council's position, as it's set out in that local transport plan, is that funding has to come from government. How government finds that funding is a question that Kent County Council in its local transport plan leaves to the government to address. But that's really as far as I can say in terms of the funding challenge. It is predicated on there being more funding, and we've used the local transport plan to set out, and we already set out in plans such as the bus service improvement plan what we would do if we had funding and what improvement we would hope to achieve. But it's really fundamentally down to whether that funding is going to be there or not.
Thank you. Any more in the room? Yeah. No?
Introduce myself, one councillor schools from Bolton and Courtney. My other question was on the map for Swale. It said about improving new links to the M2. That, as I understand it, is wholly dependent on a very large development. So that must seem an extremely speculative thing to be putting into a local transport plan. So I was, wondering whether that really ought to be there, given the frailty of that as a proposal.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. And I think it's clear to sort of delineate between the existing developer proposals that have set out effectively what they term the movement corridor and the connectivity that they consider is necessary to make their development acceptable in planning terms. And of course, Swale Council as a planning authority will come to its determinations on those. KCC's representations on the applications so far are obviously published on the Swale portal, and you can see those there. So you've got the need for them based upon a claim by a developer, and the consideration that everyone will make in terms of the transport assessment. But what we've done is identify and acknowledge that within Sittingbourne town centre itself, as an urban area, there is a substantial congestion issue, and what the solution to that isn't predetermined. There are different options. One of the options is partly what the developer has identified, and that might be part of a solution to addressing congestion with or without development. So whether development happens or not, new road links might be part of a solution to addressing Sittingbourne town centre congestion, but there might be other solutions as well, other options. And we don't know what that preferred best solution would be at KCC. We'd have to go through a form proper optioneering process. It's likely that whatever solution would be needed would again be probably of a cost where it can't be funded by KCC. It would need to be funded by government, and therefore it's likely that it would probably have to pass the hurdles of government appraisal and funding approvals, which means looking at what all of those options would be. So I think it's important to be clear that what's in the local transport plan isn't an endorsement of the development proposals, but rather an acknowledgement that there is a town centre congestion issue, and what options there are for addressing that could include new road links. But we don't know what the precise right solution would be. But this is an opportunity, of course, through the consultation for people to make their own views known and what those options could be. And those could be drawn into the plan as well and acknowledged but we won't be able to do any of that optioneering work, as I say, until we receive funding, because it would be, you know, millions of pounds in terms of planning, development, design, environmental assessments to come up with a package programme of solutions for Sittingbourne town centre congestion, further to, you know, the investment that's already going into the network associated with growth across the Sittingbourne and wider Swale area.
Thank you. Councillor Bowen?
Thank you. Councillor Bowen, in terms of Linstead Ward, just a couple of points on what I've heard. Thank you for the presentation, Mark. As Councillor Speed mentioned about the rural bus services, I think, as a first point, I think it's a little bit hypocritical, and I know this is your decision, I understand why KCC did it, but to call something a bus improvement plan when they actually cut and pretty much removed the rural bus services to be non-existent is a little bit tough to take. But my main question is, and you touched on it already, is with this plan, and we know from what we hear in the press, given the funding concerns at KCC, how on earth is this going to be paid for, given also if we're relying on national government, given the news and the commentary coming from national government at this time of actually there is no particular money. So I think these are all aspirational. I mean, it can be done, great, but how on earth are they going to be afforded? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I can't answer the latter question. I can't tell you how government will fund transport nationally, and the pressures, as I say, that not just KCC but every local transport authority are under. What we're doing is responding to the request that government placed upon local transport authorities, which was to set out new local transport plans, and as part of that to cost them as far as we can, so that government has an understanding of what that financial ask is of local transport authorities. And on the BSIP, the Bus Service Improvement Plan name, I sympathise. Again, I know it sounds like I'm pointing at government a lot. It was specifically the name that the former government came up with for these plans. Said, give us something, it's brand new, everybody. It's called a Bus Service Improvement Plan. This is what it should look like. This is what it should say. Please go away and do them. So that's what we did.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. I didn't introduce myself, Councillor Speed from Tenham and Linstead. You've also got objectives in there of improving roadside air quality and improving the condition of the road network. However, whenever there's a planning application in Swale that will involve a lot more houses, which in turn means a lot more traffic and a decrease in air quality, why is it the KCC hardly ever has a comment on those applications unless there's an absolutely enormous one, and never turns up to our planning committee meetings to give advice on what the traffic impact of those developments would be?
I can't answer that. I can't answer on behalf of the teams at KCC, the transport and development teams that deal with that part of our responsibilities. I can take that away and pose that question to them. If someone could provide your contact details following this meeting, so that someone can respond to your specific question.
Yeah, I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Want to go again, Alistair?
In another presentation by from KCC that was on the Health Systems Obesity Prevention Programme, there was mention of a strategy of moving away from predicting what traffic's going to be needed and then providing the roads for it, to actually providing a vision and that means it doesn't depend on more car use. Or I think they will call it vision and validate. But I couldn't see any reference to that in this plan, which struck me as a bit odd. That was another important transport theme coming out that seemed to be coming out of KCC, unless I've missed it.
is in the plan. I'm just having a look to see which page. But in the proposals, there is a proposal called Development Management Principles. Here we are on page 36, which is does set out broadly that sort of emerging philosophy. So page 36 of the full plan, not the executive summary. As I say on there are two proposals, and one of them is called Development Management Principles. So again, have a look and obviously form your view on how far it goes and so on. And you're welcome to respond further through the consultation once you've been able to evaluate it.
Thank you very much. If there are no other questions online, we'll say thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for listening. Excellent feedback, really helpful to hear, and challenging but understandable questions as well. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, and have a nice evening.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
We shall move on then to agenda item 6, Faversham Pools briefing. So I'd like to welcome Mike Ellsworth and John Lazenby. We'll give a briefing.
I've seen that. Thank you very much.
There's a briefing on Faversham Pools, which I know many of us are familiar with us in a variety of contexts.
Some of you will have seen these documents. I apologise for anyone. But just by way of introduction, my name is Mike Ellsworth. I'm co-chair of Faversham Pools. I've been involved with the board since 2014. I joined as a trustee originally. I live over on the front ranks. I'm technically a DFL, but in my defence, I did hot pick here for many years in the 50s and 60s. So that's my one claim to fame for not being a DFL. But look, I know most of you would have been at the pools at some point, so I won't labour this. But just a few words of introduction. John's going to talk a little bit about where we think we add value to the community, and I'm going to finish up with the challenges going forward. So you need to allow me my 5 minutes of fame at the end of the session. But you all realise the outdoor pool was opened in 1964, public donations. We own the freehold of the outdoor pool. We're an independent charity with a board of trustees. We're a company limited by guarantee to give us some sort of incorporation protection. The indoor pools was built by Swale Borough Council and paid for by Swale Borough Council. So we actually manage the indoor pools on behalf of Swale. They belong to Swale Borough Council. So I always say we joined at the hip. Our success is Swale's success. Our failure is Swale's failure. We talk a little about, we get tremendous throughput in the pools, 140,000 in 2023. And I'll allow John to talk a little bit more in detail about, the sort of things we do. We're often referred to as a discretionary service, and we've all done this in local government. We're actually mandatory. We provide the all-important water safety training and skills for people like David and primary. So there is a mandatory element about what we do. Just going back to the land take round there, typical Faversham, the freehold demarcation line goes through the middle of reception. Who else could have invented that? If you start with a blank sheet, you wouldn't be there, would you? And can you imagine trying to get insurance for one half of reception and the other? But with the aid of Swale's officers, we've got it sorted. John, so just tell us a little bit about that community.
So my name's John Lazenby. I've been in general manager for 3 years. I come from backgrounds of leisure. And the important thing about the pool is that it's open this evening for the outdoor pool. We give benefits of wellbeing, health, fitness, mental wellbeing as well. So we have a strong connection to the community for both fitness, health, wellbeing, and then the memories of everyone as they grow up and what they do. So we've become a social hub for the town. We're a great employer. We have lots of staff that come through us. We give lots of 16 to 21s their first job. So we have 70 plus employees on our books at the moment. So as well as what we provide for the community as a base for customers, it's what we give our life skills for the young lifeguards that go off into the wider world. And what we found from SPEAR research that we did through Christchurch University, we did a stronger sense. They did research into what we mean to the community through outreach. They did speaking to those that use us and those that don't use us. And what we've been able to do over the last 3 years is develop the business to cope after COVID, where a lot of pools have suffered, a lot of leisure centres have suffered. We've been able to invest in our infrastructure and our business so that it can survive, so that we can look to reduce our carbon footprint, which will reduce our utility cost, which is vitally important. We can then give ourselves the best chance for survival in the long term. So bits and pieces that we have invested in is through grants, funding, being able to bid on a variety of things for our infrastructure, for swimming pool pumps, inverters, reducing our energy outputs, to the flooring outdoors, to the new lockers, to the changing rooms and the showers that we've invested in ourselves. And we've invested time in our staff as well, so to create a team that will stay with us, so that we remain part of the community for them as well, to give us a sound base and structure that we can work on going forward. And the staff are passionate. Lindsay's been teaching there for 30 plus years. Everyone's been taught to swim by Lindsay in the town. And it's that makes us unique. Besides the outdoor pools, and we've been busy through the summer as it's been nice weather, we then come through to the winter months and the outdoor pool just doesn't have that appeal. We are then just the swimming pool that needs local support users, the 800 pupils a week, the 25 schools, primary and secondary, and special educational needs schools that use us. As Mick says, we provide that as a base. And we get them from Petton, from Sittingbourne, from Canterbury, Whitstable, that will come to us and use us.
I should mention the air handling unit. We were very successful getting Sport England show government, previous government funding, best part of £250,000 with the help of Slough, to spend on air handling, which will reduce condensation, improve energy usage in the pools, and extend the life of the portal frame. Anyone will recall, perhaps last year, we had to suddenly close because of issues around the portal frame, and that's all in hand. So that's us in the community. In terms of our priority, one thing we've done very recently is to strengthen the board of trustees. I don't want to oversell it. Well, I think we have a talented board of trustees without being big-headed about it. We've gone out recently on an advert. We've got 5 new trustees in. There's about 11 of us now. We've brought in Carol Brown, who's Director of Commercial Services at the British Library. She's joining us. We've got a couple of senior fundraising trustees, one with the Girl Guides and one Deputy Chief Executive of the Land Aid Trust, which is a homeless housing charity. We've brought in an HR professional as well. So we really have strengthened. We've already got a really good building guy who looks after the building aspects, running the building practice in the town. I'm an accountant. We've brought a second accountant on, sadly, onto the board. So, I think we're doing all right at board level. Where do we want to get to our funding? Our funding is a constant challenge. We've actually done quite well in capital investment. We've attracted various grants. Slough are going to pay for some further improvements on the portal frame. We're faced with a mandatory closure for 2 weeks in November, which is, quite a big thing for us. We work on a not-for-profit. We lost 100k last year. It was a bad summer. By that I mean, last year, if it's a bad summer in school holidays, we're stuck basically. This year's been a bit better. We had a reasonable summer, so we've managed a little bit of replenishment of our reserves, but we've got to get through those winter months. So we like to build up a cash reserve by September to get us through that period. I don't want to open up old stores, but it's my 15 minutes of fame. So we were cut in 23-24 from 100k to 80k by Slough Borough Council. That's a big number for us, 20k. 100k used to pay for something regional of 14% of our operating costs. The 80k only now represents about 8% of our operating costs. It costs £1 million a year to fund the pools. What are the pressures on us? The national minimum wage, which we support, everyone supports it, but 8 and 10% has put some under pressure. And of course, there's a knock-on effect. So if you pay somebody on the minimum wage, a lifeguard, an extra 10%, the duty manager ain't going to turn up for 50p an hour extra, is he? So you get that knock-on effect. And of course, the inevitable utilities and also chemical costs have put some of the pressure in that time. We're truly independent. Let's get to the nub of it, really. Our grant, we struggle on day-to-day revenue expenses, operating costs. We're not so bad on capital investment, but the day-to-day operating costs are a real challenge for us. And I'm sure you all would have seen Folkestone recently, suddenly went bust, didn't it? And I think it's a compelling business case for the Pools. If we suddenly went like Folkestone and went bust, the business rates bill is 87k a year on that building. Well, you get 3-month empty property relief, but what do we contribute to the car park? A lot of our people drive in. So I think it's actually a compelling business case, apart from anything else, what we bring to the town, to the town in terms of what John said about employment. What are we looking for from the councillors here in the Eastern Committee? I would dearly like to get engagement with the Labour Group and the Swale Independent Alliance, because they are the two key people in the administration. I've not been able to do that. I've tried to engage, I've written to people. I've not been able to get that engagement in political groups. I'm concerned going forward. Ideally, we would like the 20k increase. In fact, really, it should be 14% of our operating costs, but that ain't going to happen. It's definitely 40k. I would really like that back. We're going into a budget process, and I know political groups would start to discuss the budget. I would encourage anyone involved in those political groups to ask what is happening about the Fallowship Pools grant going forward. We're worried about further cuts to it. If there's a very good report, Agenda Item 9 tomorrow, Environment and Leisure, which sets the scene for the relet of the contract going forward. There's a letter in there from consultants, and there's a line that says something like, on ongoing reductions, the Fallowship Pools grant. That worries me when I read things like it's an open agenda. That does worry me when I see that, and I do wonder whether there's discussion going on. Hopefully, the accountant in me, I'm worrying too much, but I would encourage members to make those inquiries. At the end of the day, it's a democratic decision what happens to Fallowship Pools grant, but at least let's have the debate. Let's understand the implications of the pools going under, and I'm not over-egging that. Our cash reserves are down to about 250. You always have to have an eye on redundancy, don't we? We always have to have enough reserves in case we do go under to pay our staff redundancy. So look, we're still here, we're still on the planet. Let's not, always say, great thing about counting, not sound like the Grim Reaper, don't we? I apologise for that. But look, we're still on the planet, but it's the day-to-day operating expenses that are a real challenge. And if, we need some forward financial planning, and not this sort of, when the cut was made 2 years ago, it was up for consultation in November. We got told in February, we do a 3-year financial plan. We like to do financial planning. So a couple of pleas, if you can, it's a democratic decision at the end of the day, and I respect that. But if you just ask your question about what's happening, I think we'd be very grateful. I'm not shut up there.
Thank you very much, Mike. Before we go to any questions, I should have probably declared as a non-pecuniary interest, I am an annual member of the pool. And I can't disagree that the outdoor pool is bad in the winter. Me and the mad few think it's the best place to be, but we are in a minority. I appreciate it. Anybody else got any questions for Mike or John?
Yes.
Councillor Jackson, sorry.
When I did an inspection of the pool, you took me around quite kindly. You had the roof being done or something.
Yeah.
Has that now been done?
So the flat roof is being planned to be into September. That's Swale Council's responsibility. The portal frame is planned for November. That will involve a 2-week closure because it is structural and we can't have public in there.
And you're thinking about solar panels. Is that right afterwards?
Well, by the councillor, they've contacted the company. Yeah, we've looked at before, but the roof technically, as Mike alluded to, isn't ours because this boundary line exists.
Maybe that's from our council.
So it's like your cost, wouldn't it, if you had solar panels?
Early indications means it would reduce our electricity spend by about 20%, and that's all. And that's if we covered every bit of our, it would only reduce it by 20%. But 20% is
20%.
Yes.
All helps. Thank you very much. Any questions online? Anyone else in the room? No? Well, thank you very much, Mike and John.
Well,
Have we-
thank you for having us.
You're welcome. So we shall move on then to agenda item 7. Councillor Rich Lehman, the Chair of the Waste and Street Cleansing Contract Scrutiny Review, is going to talk about the review taking place. There's a presentation emerging. Okay.
Yeah.
Just try,
Oh dear.
oh,
Carefully
my-
constructed stand.
Yeah, please don't look at my careful.
It needs to be a little bit close to the wall so that it can all fit in the,
Right. Yeah. Needs to be a bit further that way. Just see it there.
Thank you.
Going to try a different way because that's not presenting because that should be larger than that. Let's try again. Share. Window 2. That's better. There we go.
in a way, this wonky screen is somehow relevant or appropriate for the waste contractors it's been over the last few months. So yeah, I'm here to talk about the scrutiny review, which we agreed to undertake at the last Environment and Climate Change Committee meeting. This is a deep dive into both the changeover in the first few months of the contract, as well as looking at the procurement process and the tendering process to see where things went wrong. I mean, we know that things have gone wrong, but it's identifying where they've gone wrong and why they went wrong, in the hope that we can avoid similar mistakes in the future. And just to clarify, because I've had a couple of parish councillors assume this is something which has taken place between now and October, with the report coming back in November. This is very much not fixing the current state of things, which is happening or has been happening all along, even though it might not seem like it from the outside. And is a new set of rounds are coming in September, which will hopefully fix that. This is looking back at the changeover rather than fixing what's happening right now. Next slide, please, Jan. I've said that before. Everyone's dreamed since COVID.
That's a email.
So, I mean, I'm not sure what to say about this slide, sorry. It is what it says on the tin. Swale Borough Council are the collections authority, which is a statutory duty. In case anyone's not aware, KCC are the disposal authority in a 2-tier council system. So basically we pick up all the rubbish, take it to Sittingbourne, drop it off, KCC pick it up from there and take it somewhere else. And that's how that system works. We were previously, I mean, how long were we with Biffa before? We were in an 8-year contract with them before, was it?
Yeah.
Or, but then that was a renewal.
That was a renewal, so a big
Yeah.
reviews. Was it been better all the time you've been?
It has. So it's certainly, I think, pre-2008, I think.
Yeah, so this is, as many of you are probably aware, we're in a 3-council partnership with Ashford and Maidstone, and none of the 3 councils have had a particularly smooth ride, but in some ways we've had it worse than most, and part of the reason for that was at the last renewal, we already had Biffa in place. Ashford and Maidstone were new to Biffa and had large reroutes at that time, which meant that they didn't have quite the level of pain that we've had this time, because they only had minor reroutes when Suez took over, whereas we had a very major one. And that combined with a number of other new things like the PDAs that they now have to work with meant that there was a great deal more disruption and heat. As it says there, we're part of the Mid Kent Joint Waste Partnership. Next slide, please. I mean, if anyone has any questions, just feel free to put your hand up at any time. I don't need to take questions at the end necessarily. So when a new contractor starts, a period of settling in is always anticipated. It was called teething issues at one point, settling in, grace period, but we've certainly had that and more. And although it was made clear to, I believe, made clear to most councillors that this would last a few weeks, it's certainly been significantly worse than anyone expected. And as it says there, several months have been a disruption have been experienced, especially in my view, in many of the more rural areas. It's been a lot worse than in some of the towns. Next slide. So, as I said at the start, I should have revised this. I mean, I did look through it, but I didn't revise it. We agreed to undertake the scrutiny review, which is what we're doing now. We have a panel of 5 councillors with 1 representative from each of the political groups on the council, and we will be looking at a range of issues around the changeover, including the level of resources and staffing that were there, as well as vehicles, the data and the rounds, project management, and the communications that went out from the council to residents in the run-up to the changeover and afterwards as well. And next slide. We're going to spend the next couple of months carrying out detailed investigations and using a range of methods to get information and feedback, including workshops with council officers and Suez representatives. And the first of those is taking place tomorrow. Consultation with area committees, obviously that's what we're doing right now on the local council's liaison forum. And there will be a public survey to ask for people's experience, and it's gone out, which has gone out today.
4 hours ago.
Consultation.
Well,
It's great all over the place.
Yeah. I've been in meetings. And there are paper copies there. If anyone doesn't fancy doing it online, although I'm sure you're all very tech savvy, the paper copies are available on request. And is there an easy way for that to be requested by the council? Just phone up the council. Just phone up the council and get one. Although if it's any of you, obviously it would be easier to just pick one up at the end of the table.
And if parishes or town council want them, if you let me know, I can email you a copy and then you can just print them off if people come in or people want them. Or if you give me details, I can get them sent out. So if anyone from the parish and towns want that, just come directly.
I mean, might it be worth the town council taking some of those if they're not taken
Yeah,
tonight?
anyone that wants any, if you want one that you can then email out or have them, just let us know.
Right, yeah,
And I will make sure you get them.
I can take one of them.
Yeah.
I did email all the parish councils and town councils today with a link to the with it on the website, and there is a printable PDF version as well. So
But you
we're
might
hopefully
still-
covering
So
it.
you might as well take
But
those.
yes, please do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, this evening we would like to hear the experiences of residents, although it sounds like you've already fed them back through the website, which is good. And these will be fed into the review. You can also complete the online public survey, which you've done, and not everyone obviously. And if there is anyone who does not have online access to answer my, I'm just too good. I'm just preempting every slide and looking unprepared.
So I think the important thing, I'm just looking at some of the comments on social media. What's the point? It's not going to change. What's the, actually, this is a cross political party scrutiny. And the only way things will ever get better is if we find out what went wrong this time. So there isn't, and we might get to the point where there's politics at play, But there isn't politics at play in this scrutiny because there's Councillor Speed's on it, Councillor Lehman's on it, there's people from each political party. And from what I understand is everyone has an equal voice on that group.
Yeah.
So actually, I think it's really important that you do, if you speak to people, tell them we want their experiences, because what would be awful is if we don't get experiences, we do something, we come up, no report is ever going to say, wow, that was really good. It will say this bit was okay and this bit wasn't bad, but this bit was terrible. But then people then say, well, yeah, well, of course, that was always going to come up with, because they didn't answer my question, or no, because you didn't give us your question. So this is a piece of work that's taking a huge amount of resource because we want to get it right across the political spectrum. We don't have one councillor out of the 47 that will say to us, I don't know what the fuss was about. I had no problems at all. We just haven't got that. Things went wrong. We need to understand what went wrong, whether it was our officers, whether it was members, whether it was Suez, whether it was me, whether it was communications, whatever it was. The people who know the best are all the people out there. So please tell your friends, fill the survey in, because it's really important. And if you can't get what you want to say on the survey, tell us anyway, in a different way. And it's so important, because if we don't get those answers, we won't ever learn. And this isn't a blaming, shouting exercise. This is a learning exercise. And that's what we want it to do.
Yeah.
Thanks. Any
Wait,
feedback?
there's one more.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
No, that's fine. Oh, was that your big closing speech?
I'm sorry. Yes, sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. It was good.
If you'd like to chief
Get me
executive,
time to
just
breathe.
shut up.
So, again, I've said most of this already. The workshop's taking place through September and October. The online public survey closes in October. And we're doing all that stuff in September, which I've already mentioned. And the final report will go to the Climate Change Committee on the 20th of November. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Jackson.
Obviously, I've had the same problems in my ward as everybody else. And I have contacted Swale, I've contacted the officers, and most of the time the officers have been excellent. I've even had replies on a Sunday evening.
Yeah.
But sometimes I don't get a reply at all.
Yeah.
Now, have you had a reply today from the query I brought last night? No, and I haven't yet, which I find very disconcerting. But something like that, which I felt was very important, hasn't been answered.
I think that's just sometimes down to the sheer volume of emails that they're dealing with. Yeah. But yeah, I know what you mean. It's frustrating when you don't get a reply. I do generally get replies to the ones that I feel are more important, and I don't mind not getting replies to some of the ones which are literally just a missed bin. But yeah, when it's a bigger issue and potentially something that's got wider implications, those are the ones that you want to get replies to. Yeah. Anyone else?
So I'll not go into all the bad stuff. I will fill out the form, and you've heard at length on the challenges that Abbey Ward have experienced. But I think it is an appropriate moment to put on record the kind of thanks from the people of Felsham for what Suez did over the Hot Festival, which Biff always did a fantastic job cleaning up during and after the Hot Festival, and Suez did a fantastic job at the weekend. It was a really impressive performance. They were fantastic out doing community engagement. I'm not sure what the bin lorry driven by a dinosaur will necessarily be any more or less effective than what we've had, but it was very popular, and they did a fantastic job cleaning the streets. So I think it's worth finishing that thanks for that weekend. Councillor Craig.
I mean, I've been one. Sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chaz. I'd like to put on record my thanks for Suez, the cleaning graffiti, hateful graffiti off West Parish Community Centre. Days before Christ. I think that's a real community. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Councillor Jackson.
I was just going to say, my road must be exceptional, because we've not had any problems whatsoever over with Brambles.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, and it is a limited frame of reference, Faversham has got relatively lightly compared to Henham, Herrywood, Selling, Greatney, Gorton.
Ashford, Wye, Maidstone, Rodmersham.
Plus, we did have an incident up for a bit down in my ward, a blue bin that had been missed, and it was left out 3 or 4 times, and it was set light on Saturday night. We had 2 fire engines, and it was right down the into the pavement all night. So, and that was in Rockland Ward, which is just up.
I think a lot of the feedback you're gonna get from parishioners is you haven't emptied my bins.
Yeah.
If they're not in a position to know how the contract was put together, how it's done, what the routes are, why they're not working. Clearly, when it was done by Biffa, pretty much it worked.
Yeah.
You're in a situation where you've awarded a new contract and you're still saying nobody knows what's going on. But if you look at what's being done now and what was done then, there's a clear comparison between the two that you should be able to put it right to suggest a lot sooner.
It feels that way, doesn't it? But it honestly isn't, because I've lost a lot of hair in the last few months, trying to get it fixed. And like, just as an example, I agree with you, your general point, and as an example, we've been sent the new routes from Suez. And I hope I'm not, we've been sent the new routes from Suez, and I spent a long time last week looking through them, because the routes that were sent across in February, which we'd requested in October, were not good, but there was not enough time to do anything to change them before, because we started the changeover was in late March, so we had to send out the letters ahead of that. And in looking through the new routes and verifying them to make sure they made sense, I could see that they made a lot more sense. And then looking back at the previous routes, I learned some things, some interesting things about how bad the previous routes were, the ones which we're still currently operating under. And one thing that really stuck out to me was Graveney, where the main road from Graveney, Cecil Road, is collected on Friday. All of the little side roads in Graveney are collected on Wednesday. It makes absolutely no sense for 2 lorries to go to the far end of the borough. And when I picked this up earlier, months ago, about Doddington, one of the officers said, and probably fair enough to some extent, possibly, maybe one of the lorries is on their way through to somewhere else and the other one's doing the side roads. And that does potentially make sense in Doddington, but it does not make sense in Graveney. And this is the kind of thing that a member of the public might be able to feed this kind of information back without necessarily having the overall view, but they might have some nugget which could be fed into inform a question.
I'm just struggling to understand how members of the public can input to that. And I also, with respect, find it difficult to know how members can look at this and get it right when it's been put together by the officers and they've had 20 years experience of it. And they should have spotted all of this. Not dumping on you guys to go the same one. I don't think this one looks right.
Yeah.
You know, and then I feel for you because you're in a rock position and you shouldn't leave it.
So what people can do is they can say, my bin day used to be this day and it always worked and it's now changed. Or I notice the bin lorry comes past my house and doesn't collect my rubbish, but it collects the side roads. And then, so actually what we're asking for, we're not asking for residents to tell us what we should have done differently in the contract. We're asking for their experience. So it's how did it feel for them?
Sorry, but you're going to get something saying it didn't work for me.
But we can then build a picture.
And that's irrelevant for 1 or 2 people telling you their bin wasn't there. The picture is much larger than the single bins and single.
But what we also have is an awful lot of data. So for every day for the last since March, we have got a list of each round, what percentage was collected, what percentage wasn't, when did they go back. So we have this massive amount of data, which is also feeding into this, that will say one of the problems, and I absolutely don't want to preempt anything that happens, but one of the problems, if I was asked, what do you think the problems with this bin contract were? One of the problems was the narrow ones. So narrow, we had rounds that had narrow vehicles. And I would say, well, we need to look at that. We need to look at how did that happen? Because if you said to me, like, top of your head, what's the problem? It's narrow. When I look at the data, which I've looked at every day, that's the problem that I see. We've also had things where Biffa would do something, stop on the side of a road, which actually Suez say, that's not safe, we can't do that. So now we have to understand what's the difference there, who's right and who's wrong. Because if actually Suez are right, we've got to find a different way. Biffa might have just done it. I'm not saying they did or didn't. So there are some things that we don't know, we wouldn't have known. The members looking at the rounds, you're absolutely right. Rich shouldn't have to do that. And he doesn't have to do that. But actually, it's been really helpful because what members have got is local knowledge, and that's really helpful. So that has helped us.
I'll shut up, but I mean, data is king, and you've had all the data, and you should have been able to spot it all.
And that's part of the questions of the thing is, did we have the data? What data did we have? But that's the questions, that's part of the scrutiny. What happened with the data?
And even just here, in this conversation, Larissa has just said, Suez is saying that the bin men aren't allowed to stop on the road. And this, to me, thanks to my being connected with many, many hundreds of bin emails, links in with the fact that I've got people on the A251 whose bins are regularly not collected, especially in Battlesmere. The ones down the side tracks are collected and the ones on the main road aren't. And the drivers are saying, well, they're not supposed to stop there. So then the question is, why the hell have we not found a solution in 5 months to this problem? They need to have their bins collected. What's the solution? And it's linking these little bits together, and each one of those responses from the public in isolation may not give us anything, but in combination with hundreds of others will hopefully paint a picture.
I'll talk to you later.
Councillor Thompson, then Craig.
You explained before, Rich, but I've got another 5 people in the same places again, so they've had 6 months, not having them. So in rural areas, how do you think we can move forward there on this here with, obviously, the guys are going to react, as you said, to the areas where they're going to get the least amount of costings against them. How can we put some sort of leverage to then insist that they do collect really rural areas? Because I've got exactly the same ones again, so I've got there. How can we enable that somehow?
So this is a problem. I mean, it's probably a problem across the borough. And when the contract was, prior to the contract being started, we were told that Suez were working with an area system. So Sheffield would be on Monday, and it doesn't matter which one's which, but basically each part of the borough will be on a different day of the week. And then when it came to it, when the round started, Faversham was collected on a Wednesday. All the villages around Faversham are collected on any day of the week, I think except Monday. The new grounds will have most of the villages to the east and south of Faversham collected on a Wednesday, same as Faversham, which makes a lot more sense because at the moment, Faversham's on a Wednesday, all these villages, a lot of them are on a Friday. These get missed on a Friday. And so there's 200 missed here and 600 missed in Sittingbourne, which is also collected on a Friday. The catch-up lorry on a Saturday will go back to Sittingbourne, but maybe it's quite a long way to get to these villages. Whereas if they're coming to Faversham to pick up the missed bins on a Thursday that they missed on a Wednesday, they can also go to those villages and collect. So in that regard, hopefully they'll collect them all on the day, so it won't be an issue. But in terms of missed bins, they can send one lorry back to one place rather than, having people at opposite ends of the borough needing a catch-up and maybe only having one catch-up lorry. So hopefully that will be better.
Councillor Crayford?
Just got 2 points today. The first point, I think asking for public's feelings, experiences is vital. So we look at West Street here, they have a weekly collection, as I want to see. They've now moved to a fortnightly collection in line with the rest of the town, but there's been no comms there. So capturing that wouldn't be captured in the data because it would be captured as in the bins are being collected. But that sort of experience and asking people for those questions is vital. My second point is when Swell does this review, I hope they're going to be clear on roles and responsibilities, because essentially I think what is lost generally is this isn't a council-run service. This isn't the council going out places for bins. It's an outsourced provider, and essentially it's a failing of an outsourced provider. Now, I commend Councillor Lehman for looking at bin routes, but essentially that's not what we're paying the outsourced providers to do, is it? To our members and our sponsors to correct their problems. So I hope roles and responsibilities are very clear, and that the council doesn't take on too much responsibility in the wrong areas.
Yeah, I'll just come back quickly on West Street and say that I've spoken to Kelly about that, and that has apparently now been moved back to weekly.
Was it?
I don't know, and she couldn't work out why it had gone to fortnightly.
It was an example of the data wouldn't talk about people's experiences.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Councillor Brown?
Okay, just not going to go around collections and more today. But anyway, in terms of the actual form, the survey, I've just had a look at it. There's a lot of rating, were you satisfied, unsatisfied, which will give you the quantitative data. At no point in that survey have I just seen where you're actually asking the individual who's replying, where do you live? What ward are you in? What street are you in? It's a universal
I think it's got a postcode. Yeah, I'm sure it's got postcode.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think I've got, okay, that's, I didn't see that. In which case I
I
apologise.
think it's a postcode, Boyd. I'm not sure.
It will need a more pinpoint address.
Yeah.
But that's the issue with it as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Yes, postcode.
Postcodes, right.
There is an issue about a pinpoint address, is that stops people filling it in. Because people think if they put their address and they put something negative, then the bin's not going to get collected. And so, and it's not true, it's actually, but we have got to be careful that people feel very, uncomfortable about saying something negative and being identified.
And just picking up on the other thing that it was kind of included in your comment there, Lloyd, but possibly wasn't where you were going. There are text boxes in there for comments outside of the yes, no, for the more qualitative data. Does anyone else have any questions?
I can resist. Oh, well.
Thank you, Councillor Newman, for your restraint. There's nobody online. So that's great. Thank you very much, Councillor Lehman. We shall move on then to agenda item 8. What used to be this area committee's greatest obsession before bins, took all of our distraction. But flooding in the Eastern Area Committee. So I have circulated the updated tracker of our flooding issues. I have, as I do every time, sent this to our water partners at Southern and South Eastern Water. It will come as a surprise to a few of you that I have not had a response to that particular piece of outreach, but I won't nag them. But this is, again, the opportunity for any members or visitors or parish council colleagues to add anything to the tracker or update anything. You can also do that offline by emailing me, and I will update it and circulate it again. It's just a continuing list of the challenges we face and trying to nag those people responsible to improve. So open the floor to any notes or input or questions on that. Councillor Green?
I've got one question actually. Is there another way the committee can engage with South East Water and the other departments? Because I commend and admire the committee to have a tracker. But if we look at Tanner Street in St Helens, which I believe in the tracker.
Yep.
But those issues are going to go quite a couple of years. So I'm asking the committee, is there another way of engaging with people responsible to get more traction? And I really like traction. I think it's really good positive.
Councillor Chester, you want to?
I was told by next Conservative councillor that years ago they used to sludge the drains or something, push all the sludge out, and they don't do that anymore. Is there any way we can request that? Because
can
I'm talking about the same ones council.
Town Street, yeah. I can certainly add that to my list of questions to ask. In answer to Councillor Craven's question, I'm open to suggestions. Another way to read out them. I have done
I haven't been asked.
yeah, I've done the classic. I email them this every time it's completed. It's the kind of the first thing I do. I email it to their outreach group and their complaints system. I have very sporadic contact with kind of a PR officer, basically, who says warm words about wanting to do community engagement, but then when I send them the invites, magically fails to reply to that email. So that's the kind of situation, but very open to any additional suggestions on that. And I will, as we've not had an area committee for a little while, it has actually been a little while since I've done any nagging. So I will do some more nagging in the autumn, obviously, which is when it will be at its worst, probably. Anybody else going to cast a speak? Oh, sorry. Point in the right direction.
Quite agree with you. A few years ago, when I chaired the scrutiny, we wanted to bring various bodies in for a scrutiny meeting, that one of which was Southern Water, and we couldn't get them even then. So I totally feel the pain. Similarly, in the last couple of months ago, within Tenham Linstead, the water treatment plants in Tenham had an incident which resulted in them having to pump the sewage out, from what I understand, and having vehicles come down about every 20 trucks come down stationary about every 20 minutes to take whatever it was out. It was due to something got into the system, and they call it an unknown substance. But simply, when I tried contacting Southern Water saying what's going on, got radio silence. The press had a little bit more of a result than we did, but it is really concerning, because it then met the public think, what is going on there?
Yeah.
Wasn't flooding, but it was something potentially we don't know, could have been far more serious.
Absolutely agree. And we had a not dissimilar one of the issue at the waste sewage treatment plant down past the Iron Wharf boatyard, where they were planning to discharge sewage into the creek and had no plan to avoid doing that. And luckily, by a number of residents and councillors contacting the Environment Agency, they listened to the Environment Agency, but they had ignored those same councillors phoning them to tell them that this was a bad idea and they should maybe have a backup plan. But there we are. Anybody else or anybody online? Catherine Tutt.
Just a quickie. All of these listed, there's only actually one, anything actually been done. But that's the point in the art. Yes, it's a bad thing, it's causing a problem. But there's nothing.
So as I understand, they've all been reported by councillors repeatedly, but perhaps as it's now an ongoing tracker, we should list that they were reported by councillors at a time to make that clear. But that was the
outcome of this, because the column may have gone, but there's
there are no.
complaint.
Well, indeed, as far as we're aware, nothing has been done to improve any of them. So there are currently no positive outcomes. But take that note on the reporting. I say all the councillors who put this tracker together and fed into it at the time, which is several months ago now, as of January, February this year, that they were reporting things to me that they had already reported to the relevant body. So that probably should be included in the tracker. Glenn?
Yeah, I was just going to say number 15 on this list, Staple Street Crematorium. There were repairs or a new culvert installed, which helped a lot with the problem there, where the road was flooded for a number of weeks. I don't know if it's kind of, I think we probably need to wait until October and November to decide whether it's actually resolved or not. So, but yeah, I just wanted to note that.
That's helpful to know, and to say if we can, by the next area committee, we will hopefully know.
Yeah.
That's have a positive impact on Councillor Speed.
I agree with the comments made earlier about how difficult it is to get a response from Southern Water. You either get no response at all, or if you do get one, it's just sort of PR puffery. Have we tried asking our local MP to write the chief executive of Southern Water to arrange a meeting so we can actually thrash all these issues out?
I don't believe we have done that, and actually, I think probably if we check the minutes of the first meeting where we discussed this, we said we would. So we probably should do that.
Because the chief executive can't ignore a request from a member of parliament in a meeting. That might make it happen.
Yeah, I think that's a really useful point. If we minute that as an action for me, we should. I think probably was minuted for an action for me in January, and I failed to do it, but that's fine. Do that, Councillor Crowley?
I was going on to Councillor Spence' excellent idea. Would it, in my experience, it's probably better to shade it than get suppressed. So would it be advantageous to arrange a public meeting with the support of, I see a lot of these are KCC as well, KCC councillors with the impacted wards, ask the MP to come, ask the MP to invite Southern Water, swell councillors, and then if they don't come, you can sort of. Is that a tactic? Because they're not going to come. I don't know how we can ever talk to them.
Yeah.
I think the MP has had a meeting that she invited Southern Water to, that she hosted.
About 2 or 3 years.
It was a
ago, I
round
think.
table, yeah.
Yes.
So I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it again, but when you said it was, I am 99% sure that happened.
Did they
Uh, Yeah, they did turn up, and then they came,
Council Chamber 1.
there was a council chamber, so I think they've been twice. I'm not saying they shouldn't come again, but actually I think Helen she has done that once before. I think if we talk to her, I'm sure she'd be happy to do it again, but she did do it and they did come, so kind of just for completeness. I think you were thinking, oh, well, no, we've done this, so.
Is RMP the route to this? They obviously listen to you. Is there some sort of engagement with the MP?
We should. I think that's
Yeah.
Councillor Speed said, that's certainly a route we should explore, as we're not having success, disappointingly, in our own right. Anybody else? Can't see anyone online. Get back to. So, agenda item 9, matters arising. You will find the matters arising updates report in the agenda. Anybody have any questions or comments? So we've discussed agenda item 8. I think I did have a little question. Sorry, on earth buns at the QE school. Those on Faversham Council will have had a repeated exposure to this question. And my question was: is this committee able to refer things? I know we can refer things to service committees. Can we refer things to the planning committee as an enforcement question for them to look at? Because obviously planning enforcement are aware of the issue, but we've so far had limited response on that front.
My answer would be, there you go.
Okay, then we shall move that.
Because certainly we can, the planning committee don't have to take it up. But certainly if you, as the chair, if members of this committee wanted you as the chair to write to the chair of planning, so they wanted this discussed, it's up to the chair of planning, as it is with any service committee, whether planning enforcement is within the remit of the of planning. So I would say yes. And if not, then the monitoring officer will write back to you to advise you why you can't. I would do it that way around rather than.
Yeah, there's not a definite reason I can't. So I don't know if everybody's necessarily remembers this issue, but Mr. Taylor, who's a Faversham resident, raised the newly built earth buns from the QE school expansion that are against the side of the creek there, the stream, sorry, Crixtich Stream, and the flooding concerns that caused, for which there is no planning permission. The buns were a temporary measure whilst they were doing, well, meant to be a temporary measure whilst they were doing the work, and so that's a planning enforcement issue, and we've not yet had any luck in making any headway on that. But that's fine. We shall move it to the next item.
Well, so Chair, I would suggest that in order to do that, you would need the council members of this committee to propose and second and vote on it, because without that support, you don't have the mandate to do that. So if you have a proposer and a seconder, and the members vote that you want them to do that, otherwise you don't, you need a decision to do it.
Understood. Thank you very much, Councillor Bowen. Is anybody prepared to second? Thank you, Councillor Gould. Are we all in favour of making that request and seeing how the Chair of Planning feels about it?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Is there anything else on the matters of, sorry, Councillor Brayford?
I don't know if this is like this, I'm sure you can refer correctly. Had a number of publishing businesses who asked me, they can rent out parking spaces in car parks. They can't park anywhere, but they have to pay specific car parking spaces. Which obviously keep the revenues as well, but give them somewhere to park locally. So wondering if that's something for this committee or another committee, or you can advise.
I don't think it's within our remit, but I'd be happy for somebody to advise who can.
So, have the ability to do that anyway.
Okay.
If they go online and look and type in, as I've just done, style parking season tickets, they can apply for a season ticket, parking a long stay car park owned by Swale.
So that obviously the challenge for that is
Thank you for this argument.
the power of Eastern Area Committee there on full display.
Just so you know, it is the long stay, so if they're in Faversham, it won't be the central car.
But on that, were you thinking about actually having dedicated spots for them?
Well, the question that was raised was, could there be parking spots that you can rent? Then it was dedicated, then it could be, we don't mind as long as there's some spots,
So we don't have too many issues, no issues in our longer stay car parks, with the exception of the Hop Festival weekend or whatever, but on a normal day, we don't have any issues in our longer stay car parks. We obviously do in our shorter stay car parks. So it doesn't guarantee them a spot, but actually it pretty much does. And there are some benefits cost-wise for getting a season ticket rather than paying.
Thank you. And finally, on matters arising, it's been drawn to my attention that number 4, the Household Support Fund, it was announced in the spring budget that the Household Support Fund be extended by 6 months. It has been announced more recently that it's again been extended to April. So that is a good bit of news on that front. There's nothing else on matters arising. Move to item 10, public forum. Are there any members of the public who would like to ask a question? That's very good. Thank you very much. We shall move on then again. Agenda item 11, reports, updates from parish town councils. When I was very grateful to be elected the chair of Eastern Area Committee, I wrote to all of our parish and town councils in the Eastern Area, invited them to give an update on their work and any priorities they had, because obviously many of them have direct contact with their local individual ward members, but it can be helpful for all of us to get an understanding of what our neighbouring parishes and towns are all up to. So that was the aim of the invitation. So are there any parishes or towns who wish to give a brief update of some of their ongoing projects or any challenges they think the wider council group and area should be aware of?
Thank you. Just one item that might be of interest from Linstead with Kingsdown Parish Council. We own and maintain 41 streetlights, which costs us an absolute fortune in electricity costs, not to mention maintenance. We have just applied for a rural grant through Swale Borough Council to replace all of our light bulbs with LEDs, which will reduce our energy consumption and carbon footprint by about 80%. And also there'll be less light pollution because the lights point downwards rather than spreading out. The cost of that to replace all 41 light bulbs is £12,000. We've had a grant just approved literally yesterday for 75% of that cost, so £9,000. The parish council has to find the other £3,000, but frankly, that's less than we spend on electricity per year. So if we make an 80% saving, we'll get that money back within 12 months. So that just, if other parishes are in the same position, then might like to look at applying to that fund for a similar grant.
Thank you. That's exactly the kind of good news story we would like to hear and share with our colleagues. Anybody else got any parish council updates? Can't see anyone else. That's fine. We shall move on then. So, agenda item 12, the Swale Local Bus Focus Group. Due to the general election, there hasn't been a meeting of the Swale Local Bus Focus Group since February. But does anyone have any issues they'd like our representative, Councillor Gould, to take to the next meeting? And we discussed buses on the Kent Transport Plan, so we've shared our views, but there's nothing specific, then that is fine. So agenda item 13, the Swale Traffic Forum, very similar. There has not been a meeting due to the general election, but does anyone have any issues they'd like me to take to the Swale Traffic Forum when that next meets? No? Excellent.
Sorry, may I ask a question? Who goes, what is the Swale Traffic Forum discussing? You know, I don't know that if everybody in the room is aware.
No, so we were briefed on it at our previous area committee in February, I think, was when we last met, possibly.
I think it was.
Yeah, February, our last full meeting, sorry, not our annual one in May. And it is a committee to discuss kind of the traffic hotspots that are not necessarily main trunk routes. So kind of minor traffic hotspots around the towns and area. And there is an Eastern Area Committee rep, as there are for all the other area committees, to feed that in. So obviously I'm driving in and out of Faversham every day, and I'm pretty well versed on the bits that are difficult in Faversham, but less so on the bits that are difficult across the villages of the Eastern Area.
So this has been raised with me by some Faversham residents. And I don't know if it's appropriate, but I will tell you and you can decide. When KCC are closing roads, they are not taking away road closed signs afterwards, or they're putting them up quite far in advance, and people aren't sure whether roads are closed or not. And with some of the big roads like 251 closed, and then there's a road closure sign that's left over in a people have come to me to say, what can I do about it? I've raised it with KCC, but I don't know if it's something that you could also raise.
You can certainly,
Because it's causing hotspots when people aren't going up what are in effect open roads, thinking they are closed roads.
yeah, absolutely. Certainly, I know Councillor Hook has raised that and a similar concern about lack of coordination, particularly around emergency works. Has caused some real challenges in Faversham in particular over the last few weeks. We've had a number of occasions where just by chance something leaked or broke at an inopportune moment and created real gridlock very quickly. So there's more work to do on that. So they're absolutely on my list. Whole selection now. Councillor Bowen, then Councillor.
Just on that also, I'm sure we're not the only ones, but we had examples of exactly that in Tenant Linstead, but then also impacted on the bin collections. So they weren't going down the road because there was a road closed sign. Number of possible issues with that, and you don't necessarily expect, if there's a road closed sign, you take it at face value that that road is closed. You shouldn't have to be expecting, I'm not so sure about that, I'm going to go for a walk down there just to check it in, it's only point, I'm stuck. But yes, I totally concur on that. One other quick, not quick points, again, this has been mentioned over many years. There was another accident. I say accident, is there such a thing as an accident really, on the lower road in Tenham, or at the end of last week, car ended up overturned near the junction of Brocknell Lane, Portview Brocknell Lane area. It's not the first time there's been an incident down there. We raise it a number of times, we don't seem to get very far with it. But also similarly on that same route, there's no doubt applies to a lot of rural roads. I know cars have got wider, no doubt about over a period of years. And again, using the lower road as the example, when I first moved here, you could easily get two cars going past side by sides down there. That problem at all. Not anymore. And I think that's because the cars got wider, but also because the hedges are encroaching into the highway and then not being cut back, and that can be a mixture of private land, it could be KCC land, it could be anybody's land, but it's increasing the risk of accidents and collision. That is an accident. Yeah, I'm not so sure why the turn forward unless an accident, rather be something you assume happened, actually wants to be, yeah, it is a, no pun intended, growing concern.
Yeah. Thank you. No, that's a really helpful kind of local issue to answer. We've got Councillor Crayford, then Thompson, Tutt, Lehman.
Okay, Highways West Street, residents reported an increase in lorries. Is that where we contract for?
Can certainly
And then Cambridge Road is being used as a road run.
Cambridge Road.
That's useful, thanks, Susan.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you very much. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, so going back to signage, we've had in Covington and Salisbury and Browning. I'm getting the impression there's a centralised signage issue where they go and put them out before the works start. Can we go back to it being, I don't know, the KCC have got this about, whether whoever's doing the works puts the signs out at the time of the works, unless it's preempted to obviously stop restricted traffic on a large road, then obviously you put up a sign beforehand, which could be KCC saying this road is closed on such a day. But then we've then got power on the littering, that if that particular waterfall, we haven't got this middle ground that disappears in this grey area where we can never implement fly tipping. So if we got it that say it's the waterfall, we have that day, we can have it out after 7 days, slap on the littering. But we need to do something like that, because it's just continuous, really bad. And it's been brought up by a few parish councillors, whether we can change that system, make it so it's just localised from the day. Because on emergency works, it's easy done.
Yeah. Yeah, it's clearly within their capacity.
Yeah.
They can do it for emergency work. So I'm happy to ask that question. Councillor Tutt.
Thank you. Just going to say, shouldn't a lot of this go through the Joint Transport Board?
I think it can certainly be fed in there as well. Will do. Councillor Gould, are you our representative on that? Yeah, so Councillor Gould's our representative on that. So
That'll be fed in as agenda items.
we can certainly ask about doing that. That's not,
Particularly if it's KCC relative to the signage.
yeah,
Should be coming from Swales JPB. Hopefully with a KCC officer.
in attendance.
Yeah, unlikely. But they should be there to take these questions.
Because we need to actually formalise that again, similar to the other.
Yeah. So
Well,
I agree with your proposal that the Joint Transport Board would be a good place to have this discussion, particularly around signage. Obviously, some of the local issues sit much more naturally in the traffic forum. But any, so we've got a proposal, we need a proposal from a member, which I'm very happy to do from the chair, that we raise the concern with signs, the delays about leaving them out and not putting them out timely. So Councillor Bones, have a second. Are we all in favour of proposing that to the JTB? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. So that's on there. Councillor Lehman, you were on.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back on a couple of points that have been raised. So Councillor Bowen, the hedges, I guess you might already know this, but for everyone in the room's information, if they're not aware, any encroaching hedge over a highway can be reported on the KCC highways reporting tool. And if it's their responsibility, they will go and cut it. And if it's not, they will send a letter or contact the landowner and tell them to cut it. And if they don't do that within a few weeks, you can email your KCC councillor to chase it up, and I will do that. And then coming back to what Terry was saying about the traffic management, the signs, I'm not sure again how many people are aware, but each of the different utilities and KCC will employ a traffic management company. So the people that go and do the works aren't the ones that put out the signs. Southern Water will send out TMS or someone to go and put those signs out. And each of the, I mean, I'm sure some of the utilities do use the same traffic management companies, but it's not an efficient, it's efficient for them, but it's not efficient for the road user. In that a lot of stuff ends up being put out a day early or taken away 5 weeks late. But yes, it is a quality system, but it's what we've currently got.
And it is dangerous because people start ignoring them.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
obviously nobody in this room, but people do start ignoring, and then you get to the point where it is closed and everyone's surprised.
Yeah.
And that's not safe. So
Yeah.
certainly on the country roads, I have concerns. And where the places like the 251 are closed, people are driving around those that they don't know,
Mhm.
seeing a road closed sign and just thinking, well, I don't have where else to go, so I'll continue on. That's
And-
not.
Yeah, you reminded me of something that I learned. It's basically the road closed sign we put at the furthest point at which a lorry would not want to have to turn around if they went down that road and they couldn't turn around. And the worst example I've seen in the last few years is on the A2 at the top of Faversham Road, the road that goes down to Newnham and Doddington. There was a closure, which was almost in Lenham, 8 miles away from the road closed sign. But you know, everyone is just driving, but everyone who knows is just driving past that road closed sign, but it builds up. You know, you learn then to just ignore road closed signs because they're not.
Because the road isn't closed.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Any more on special, councillor Jackson?
Yes, going back to councillor Craven's point about Cambridge Road, we've had several residents complain about this and they're wondering about, could it be made one way? And the other trouble is the Osbridge Road bridge, the signage is not clear enough and HGVs are going up there, can't get on the bridge, then they've got to go into Cambridge Road to reverse and someone's got to guide them and it's an absolute nightmare because they can't turn around anywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm,
And even a bus was doing it the other week.
I'll absolutely add it to our list for the traffic forum. I know that at the town council, we've discussed adding that to the LC whip and the HIP. So those certainly those council Saunders raised those issues. Absolutely. So those are definitely on the list of things people are aware of, but very happy to raise them in the traffic forum as well. And that is a spot with where that road narrows with the double parked cars, where it's not. Yeah, and Chiltern Crossing for the park and all sorts. It's not an ideal junction by any stretch. Any more on the Swale traffic forum? No, thank you very much then. So agenda item 14, local issues to be raised. We've obviously already done a parish council roundup and a public forum. So if there are any more local issues to be raised, see you later. Moment.
Police do not seem to be so visible at the moment. At one time, we were having regular meetings in the Alexander Centre, Western community. That all seems to have died off, dropped off. We're still getting a lot of antisocial behaviour. Councillor, or ex-councillor, Ted Wilcox has found a great big one of these sabre knives. I think it was on Kent Online in Clay Park, Bow Road. So I'd rather like either the police to attend meeting here or to resume their meetings that they used to have at the Alexander Centre.
So again, I suspect, do you know what? I think I can invite them of my own discretion. There you go. So you don't need to vote on that. I'm very happy to invite them of my own discretion. That's a very sensible suggestion. I agree that the surgeries were really helpful. I know a number of us in this room have been to them. They were a really good thing. So I think that's a really sensible request. So we will do that. Any other local issues to be raised? No. Then moving on to the final item, item 15, matters to be referred to service committee chairs for consideration. So just about the clarity of the minutes, we voted under matters arising that I would refer the QE Earth funds to the chair of planning committee for an enforcement question on that. But are there any other matters that we wish to refer to service committee chairs? No? Marvellous. Thank you very much. So then, thank you very much for your attendance this evening. The next meeting takes place on the 10th of December 2024 here at the Alexander Centre. Thank you very much for indulging me in my first chairing session, and I shall close the meeting at 8:48.
The heading on there says amendment to the elected meetings.
No, so there is an election ongoing at this moment for the Priory Ward. So there will be a new councillor for Priory Ward in 3 hours or so, and they will be in attendance.
You just don't need to be fair. I don't really just. So if any